Right, good afternoon, and thank you for having me here, for your presence here in the room, listening to the story about Madaster. As you can see, slightly disabled, so therefore I already was on stage. It's getting better, but I broke my ankle. About Madaster, what is it? And what is the background? Why did we started it? So, very simply said, Madaster is the global online register for materials and products in the built environment. As easy as it is. Just write down what you have in materials and products, so you always know what you have where. And then in the built environment, because you already could hear today that the construction sector, either it be real estate or the infrastructure, creates enormous amounts of waste. And that's what we want to eliminate. And in order to do so, we think, the initiators of Madaster, the basic functionality you need is just a good understanding of what do you have at what particular place. I'm first going to present a couple of slides to you with a vision, the vision why we started it. And the first is a very simple one. Our planet is a closed system, so everything we have, that's all we have. We don't get any new stuff in, and apart from an accidental Tesla that's being shot in space, everything stays on this Earth. And if it's a closed system, it means that our resources are scarce and they're limited. Even if there's a lot, it is scarce. But we don't experience it in daily life. While if you have an art object, which is 1 out of 2, you cherish it like it's very valuable, and if you have 1 out of 1 billion, you think, there's still left enough. However, the concept is, it is scarce, it is limited. And if that's the situation, why do we produce a lot of waste? Why do we create, as a society, as an economy, so much matter of which we say it's worthless? We don't need it anymore, we throw it away. And that's very strange, and we don't have to create waste. Because waste actually is material, but we don't know what it is. So it's material without an identity. And if waste is material without an identity, it actually is rather simple to give that an identity and to avoid, maybe even eliminate waste. Give materials an identity. It's very difficult. Technology, numbers, databases, no. With human beings, we found a solution that everybody on this planet understands. It's a passport. If you have a passport, you have an identity. If you have a passport, you can travel. If you have a passport, you can go to your government and say, I'm a legal citizen over here. If you don't have a passport, it becomes difficult. If you don't have a passport and you want to have a proper normal life with human rights, it becomes very difficult. The same as with material. If we give material a passport, we can give rights to materials if we want to, but the most important thing is we know what it is. And giving passports to material is one. We can also give a passport to a product. And as we focused on the construction sector, we give passports to buildings, and we can give passports to bridges or railroads. That's what we do. But if you need a passport as a human being, you go to a register. You go to your local municipality and say, well, my baby boy is born, or my baby son, my baby girl is born, I want to have a passport for my child. And then there's a register, and the staff behind the counter goes to the registers as a new baby boy or baby girl is born. That's how a passport is created. And that's what we did with the register of Madaster as well. And for you who think about how did they get to that strange name, cadaster is something that comes from Latin. And a long time ago, they used a cadaster to register land. And in some countries, there still is a land register that's called a cadaster. And what we've created is a material cadaster, a Madaster. So we created a database. Yes, technology, big data, it's pretty cool. I'll show you a picture of that later on. But before we started that, we said, well, why isn't it there yet? Well, because there are some dilemmas that needs to be solved. A dilemma of time, a dilemma of value. Because when you want to register something, or if you need to have the data, And the data about materials or products, you have all the data, relevant data, at the beginning of creating a product. When a steel beam is produced, you know exactly what strength it can handle, where it was built, how it was transported, the size of it, you know everything about it. But when you need that data, we're talking about maybe even 50 or 100 years later. And if you need the data of a steel beam that's 100 years old, nobody's got the data anymore. So we need to solve the dilemma of time, but also a dilemma of value. If you buy something new, it's worth for you, it has got value for you. You bought it because you need that particular function. When you want to get rid of it, it's useless for you. You want a new one, or you want to demolish a building or a bridge. You're not interested anymore in the value of that thing. You just want a new one, or you want to get rid of it. So again, when you have a registration, the value is there at the beginning, but it's not at the end. And yes, there is a residual value, but come on, who cares? What if it's just 5%? If you make a margin of 10, the 5%, that might be interesting, but it's way too complex. Another dilemma we had to solve was quality. If you have a register, how do you know that's correct, what's in there? And I regularly compare it to a financials registration. So if you come up with the numbers of your company and you say, well, it's correct, it's good, nobody believes you. You go to an accountant. And an accountant says, yes, I certify, I see that it's correct, I did the calculation. So with the register that we created, we are not and the registrar and the accountant. We said, we're just a register, and we invited accountants to say, okay, what can you do about it? Can you validate if it's correct what people put in that particular register? Or a certification company like SGS or Kiva or the TÜV. Yeah, there are plenty of organizations that want to check if what you wrote down is actually correct. Because if the database doesn't have the appropriate quality of data, it's not good. But if we forget to utilize the ecosystem that's already in our linear economy to transform towards a circular economy, it will never happen. So we included that linear economy for the sake of quality, but also quantity. My colleague, Thomas Rauw, the architect, he created a beautiful material passport for one particular building. And when I saw it the first time, I said, throw it away. It's approximately 250 pages, worksheets of Excel. It's documented, everything was documented. I said, okay, what do we do with it? It's just a once-off document. You don't, what to do with it? Just throw it away. It is about the data that you've gathered, and make sure that you can compare that data, or that you can store that data, and that you can be assured that the data that you need of a particular object is there. So if there is a register with only 50 buildings and 20 bridges in the world, nobody's going to use it. If you have thousands of buildings or millions of square meters registered, it becomes interesting. You can go to that particular register just knowing that the data is there. So that's what we had to solve. That was rather complex to create. But we did create it because technology nowadays is rather easy to use. Creating a big data database or platform, that's something that other companies have done before. So we started building, making sure that it was a nice user interface, making sure that we could grow very rapidly globally, and giving insights to, and this is one of the pictures of the platform where you can see the various layers of a particular building and what material is used in that particular layer or the total. So how many steel is there, how many glass, how many stone. And if you say, well, I want to know not only what material is there in that particular layer, so the flooring or the skin of the building. If you want to know the product, you just drill down. I'm not showing you the platform right now, but you can click, you can down-click on each and every element up to the level of where we got the data from, the steel beam. And if you say, well, I don't have all the information about the steel beam, we have a big data platform, so connecting to other databases is not that complex for us. So if there is a database of a producer or a database with all sorts of LCA documentation in it, we connect to that particular database, retrieve the information that's required, and show it to you. Hey, that's handy. That's what we've created. And if you think, Pablo's talking a lot of nice stuff, but is it live? Yes, it's live for 1 year in the Netherlands. Small country, pretty active in circular economy. It's not enough. So we rapidly grow. So we're talking to Switzerland. We're talking to Luxembourg. We're talking to Belgium, Taiwan, contacts in Australia, US, obviously. Because when the transition towards a circular economy is not going to last 100 years. With the technology, with the urge to actually change this world quickly, we see that the need for a solution like this is rapidly growing. So we want to roll out quickly as well. But for a startup of just 1 year old, give me a bit of time, but not a decade. Within a couple of years' time, we want to be on various continents and working together with an industry like yours to exchange data. And by the way, we are not a data broker. So if you trust your data to the Madaster platform, we guarantee you that we're not going to sell that data. Actually, the ownership of the data always remains with you. But that's what Facebook says as well. However, the ownership of the metadata, so when you put an algorithm on the data in the database, that ownership is not of the individual owner of data, but we've put that ownership in a non-profit organization that is fully transparent and is not allowed to make any money on it. With an independent board, so data cannot be sold for a commercial price. It's not for free, because you would not give your data to a platform that's fully free of charge, because that means that we can't fulfill requirements of quick availability of data and, most importantly, security of data, because you don't want your data somewhere on the street. If you're a bank and you put your banking building in this particular platform. So security is key, privacy is key, and the ownership is at a non-profit organization with an independent board to make sure that we're not making abuse of that particular data that we have. So what if you would enter your data of your building or your bridge or the products that you've produced in that Madaster register? Well, you have a registration about buildings or objects. And we all live in houses. Think about the information you have on your house at home. Do you know if the materials used in the paint that's on your walls, that it's free of any toxic material? Did your constructor give you a booklet that said, well, all the wiring in here is made out of 60% copper with some alloy metal in it? Or did you receive that? Do you trust it? You bought your house because you wanted a house, but do you have all the information? And what if you would have all the information? You would know what if you would take away a particular wall? Or what if you feel not as comfortable? Might it have to do with particular materials that were used? I think, well, it doesn't happen that often. No, but there are still people living in sick buildings. I don't know what it causes, but it helps a lot if you know what materials were used in that particular building. So having a registration at hand is a very simple thing, but we don't have it. It's not a standard thing in our economy. And what if you have a register with all the information about products and materials constructed maybe even 10 years ago or 50 years ago, with all the details with it? That's interesting. Those materials and those products will be freed up sometime. And then you can start trading them. Trading requires information. That information needs to be stored. Hey, Pablo, you said that you were not doing any commercial stuff with your register. No, that's correct. We're not a trading place. But if you create a trading place and you want data, and the owner of the data says, I'm willing to give you access to my data about what it is that I have in my bridge or in my building, we can automatically transport that data towards the respective platform where your material can be traded. And this is an awful tragedy in London, where the cladding material took fire. And that material is used all over the UK. But there was a variant on that same cladding material that was inflammable. And the producer exactly knew, this is flammable, this is inflammable. But nobody had the registration, because he just sold it to a constructor. So knowing what material you have is not only about money, is not only about an economy, it's also about risk. And if you're a banker or an investor, and I used to work in the investment sector, investing is only about a couple of things. And one of the most crucial elements in trading, in investing, is risk. Not knowing a risk is a very bad thing. So making sure that you know what you have with a proper dossier, it reduces risk, and it will make investing in property more interesting, because you just know what it is. The beauty side of it is if we have existing material and you want to reuse it, by the way, this is a picture where materials were reused in the design by the architect, you just need to have a big stock of materials that will be freed up in a short period of notice. If I'm going to tell you that I'm going to tear down my building and you will have a lot of material available within 2 months' time, there's no architect that can find a sponsor, a constructor, a municipality where you can construct within 2 months' time, while I want to get rid of the material as quickly as possible. So what the constructor or the architect needs is a huge pool of data where the chance that at least 10% will be available exactly at the moment that he wants it is available. That requires time. So the architect or the constructor needs to be able to rely on the fact that there's sufficient material available, is sufficiently described, that will become available within 5 years' time. And that's not that difficult. Investment companies, house owners, infrastructure organizations, they know what the planning is to change or reconstruct a building or to do the big maintenance so material becomes available. But it's just not worth for them to reuse that material. By having a proper registration, it becomes possible to support this design and reusage of materials. My final slide is on tracking and tracing. And I'm so glad that today I heard a couple of presenters already talk about the necessity to do that. Just working together, not only as an industry, but working together in the economy, where you can track and trace, and where you maintain, retrieve data, where you update data, where data is not being sold to a bidder that says, give me all the data so I can do a better deal, and I will pay you double. No, no, no. This is about a very basic facility in each and every marketplace, in each and every economy that needs to be available, where the register should just be a public facility. And that's exactly what we've created. And that's what we are working upon right now with Madaster. And I look forward to using that in your industry as well. Thank you for your time. And I'm so glad that I can ask Caspar Jensen on stage. I even sent him an email yesterday evening, said I'm going to introduce you. I've looked at his website. He is one of the partners of 3XN. He's the director of Green XN. If you go to his website, I hope you love his work as much as I do. At least the IOC, so the International Olympic Committee, loved it as well. So they asked to build a new office. It's being designed by your firm. And if you think it's only about pictures and nice buildings, no, he's also a professor in Calgary. And if you don't want to travel to Canada, but stick to the neighboring country of Belgium, if you go to the Netherlands, since a couple of days you're a professor at Delft as well. Ladies and gentlemen, Casper Jensen.